Thank you, Peter, for sharing your time with me this morning.
Okay.
Um, okay, we started talking, before I started recording, that I am so annoyed for you guys, and I'm sure for you and the other coaches. Depending where the audience is tuning in from, right?
Yeah.
So, like as you know, my two kids are in college, so of course, their schedule has been diminished quite a bit. However, they are still able to function, meaning they still have a life, they still go on court and train. And I even spoke with my other players who are in Florida,
Hmm.
right? And as long as they stay in their bubble, they're able to go to training. But here in Canada, my friends couldn't believe it that we were on complete lockdown. And some areas in Ontario are able to resume their training, but your club it
Yes.
just sits on this area. How frustrating is it?
It's very frustrating, it's I mean, to a degree that's it's like my livelihood, right? And I have to work. That's how I get paid. That's how I survive and put food on the table.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating that way. But in the beginning, we know that it's necessary. I mean, obviously, it's responsible thing to do.
Right.
But now that it's been so long, so it is getting frustrating. Like you want to get back on the court, you want to see the players, you work with the kids, and you want to get going. So we've been through a little bit of going back to work and then get shut down again, going back to work and get shut down again a couple of times now. So it's frustrating. There's no other way to say it.
To me, it's frustrating, to me, from an outsider, in the sense that, from what I understand, the club is following the rules. you know
Yeah,
and,
the club is.
yeah, it's
Yeah, the
following.
club is following a rule. I'm not the person that's interacting with the inspector. Obviously, the club management is doing that. My tennis director, right, Eve and Ruba, they're doing that. But from what I have heard, what I have heard is that we have inspector came in and then they did go around and check, and then they actually issued that we've been following the protocols. We are doing a very good job, and we are. We take it serious. So we've been doing all the things, and then they approve of that. But at the end, when they communicate back to, I guess, their superior officers, right, their supervisor, and then they still. I think a lot of it is just that they don't know how to categorize tennis in some ways, or in the club environment, and they just have a lot of discrepancy about should the training be kept going. And you know what, some of the inspector says, yeah, you're doing fine, you're okay, they inspect you, you're looking pretty good, and then some of them may not even know what's going on in a tennis club, and then they
Yeah.
say, well, no, you can't, because simply just because we're in lockdown, we're in gray, and they don't want nothing to be running, right? So, yeah.
Obviously, like you mentioned earlier, the shutting down and opening up, creates, it's your livelihood. That's how you make money.
Of
Okay, so
course.
that for sure is a huge impact on that. On the player standpoint, because you work with a lot of juniors,
Hmm.
right, you are the leader of your group. Which
Yeah.
is, what age group is that?
It's under 12, under 12 high performance. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
You're leader of that group. You're also, one of the coaches in the elite group. So you're
yes,
actually, right. So you're actually involved under 12 all the way, really, to your older kids.
that's right. That's right. So I see anyone from kids that are, going to college, right? Perhaps next year, right? Or even this year, right? If everything goes well, and all the way down to the youngest one I'm working with now. They're about, like, 9-year old.
Right.
So under 12, that's kind of encompass, anywhere from between 9-year old to 12-year old that I'm working with, all the way
Right.
up to the one that's about to go to college. Yeah.
So you have the, you know, the freshmen, you know, just coming in 9 years old, you know, by then they have picked up or starting to pick up, but they're, you know, pretty savvy with their tennis. They've learned skills. And then,
Mhm.
you know, all the way to your 17-year-old about to go to college. That's a really wide range. Incidentally, that is the range that, well, I don't go as young as that, but with my work, you know, my focus really is from the 12
Yeah,
to the 16, 17, because I
sure.
just feel like that's a very critical pathway. You know, they will come eventually, you know, when they come to 16, they have to, depending on the level of play, they've come to a crossroads. Do I go to college, or do I, you know, go to the pro area, the pathway? However, in that 12 to 17-year-old pathway, um, they're going from children, you know, the younger mindset, to teenage mindset, and of course to, you know, the adolescent mindset, which is a critical area, because becomes complex. Their development become complex, not just in their personal lives, but on the court as well, as you very well know. Um, I want to talk, you know, psychologically, emotionally, you spoke about the shutting and opening up is very, very difficult for these, you know, youngsters in that group that you're working with. What have you seen? What have you seen in that, the changes?
You know, I think majority of it is the fact that I think I see two things, and then I like it that you categorize them from 12 year old and up to the one that's, you know, maybe 16, 17. I think for that age group is maybe, I won't say easier or harder, but I think they, at that point, they have chosen the path, so that they perhaps they are a little bit more disciplined in terms of, okay, well, I don't get to play tennis, but training normally, but you know what, I can do some physical training, and then they can maybe try to do something at their own time. And obviously there are some clubs that are open. Well, we're the one that's not open, but you
You
know,
know,
there's some other one that's open, so they're able to kind of scoop some times to, you know, book some hittings out there. So they are probably a little bit more kind of discipline to go out and do something for their own, right? So that's okay. For the younger one, the kids are like 12 and younger. I mean, they can't really do much, right? They can drive, they can go anywhere, and then the only thing that they can do is staying home and then studying, and then, you know, maybe if the weather is nice, they get to go out and do a little bit of jogging or whatever it is. But even that needs some sort of parent supervising, right? So for them, it's tough. And the thing I also see is that, you know, like depending on the lockdown period, like our last lockdown period was end of December till just now recently, right? So it's say about 3 months. And you know, it may be okay for the first 2 3 weeks for you to stay kind of motivated, to still think that, okay, I can I'll go on and do things and that. But then after a month, you know, like kind of just being at home and doing things on your own, it's not fun, right? It's not fun for a lot of kids. They're not built to kind of go through this kind of thing, right? And then, you know, and tennis, for the huge amount of part of it, is still a social aspect. You know, like you feed off from, you know, your peers, your people that you train with. You feed off the energy from your coach, and, you know, so not able to being in a club environment, in a group environment, and train together is very, very difficult, you know. So yeah, it's kind of like it's lost of momentum, and then they have to find ways to, you know, to get back, and, you know, physically, mentally, and everything, you know.
well,
So
that's the thing. You're right. For the older kids, they understand this is temporary, hopefully.
Yeah.
so they will, go, but it's tough for Canada because it's so cold. I mean, we're still indoors practically.
Of course.
The weather's starting to turn now to be
Mhm.
nicer, but it's they could never build a momentum long enough because it takes time to build momentum. For the older
Yes.
kids, sure, they can do, the fitness, they understand. I am just wary of the motivation.
Yeah.
We're talking not just training. I mean, there are like absolutely no tournaments in
Exactly.
Canada because competition is the reason why these kids train, is to get
Yes.
excited for that, right? So, and
Yes.
then for the younger ones, I'm just afraid like they're gonna lose that money. Why am I training?
Yeah, that's a big worry, and it's very valid. I mean, the fact is that there's no tournament, and like exactly like you said, you're playing tennis because of the competition. At least in the program that I'm teaching is more towards the performance stream, right? So a big part of it, of why they're training, is that we encourage them to go out and compete. And some may compete a lot, some may compete a little bit less, but nonetheless they understand that tennis is a game and it's meant to be played. So now that there's no playing, uh, it's difficult, like, mind you, like, say it doesn't have to even be shut down. If you are in some sort of high performance tennis program training 20 hours a week and you don't compete, well, then eventually you're going to think, what's the point, right? Are
Right.
you just going to go out there and get a good sweat? I mean, I don't really think that that's the right mentality, right? I mean, you could get a good sweat by just doing something else. You don't have to be going out there training full time like this, right? So yes, competition is a big part, and without the tournament is very, very difficult. And with the shutdown and everything, and we have no idea when the tournament is going to get started again. It's a bit of a hard selling point, right? How do you communicate to the players, say, well, our goal is to be ready for June. Why? Because maybe national is around the corner, but now we have no idea when the tournament is going to happen. So you need to find something to motivate them, to inspire them, to something for them to aim for, which is very difficult now, right?
Right. I know, you mentioned earlier you work with the youngsters as young as 9 years old. And I know in your earlier career, the coaching career,
Mhm.
you were with Bianca
Yeah,
Andreescu, right?
yeah.
So tell me, what age was she when you first started working with her? And at what
Mhm.
point in time you're like, wow, this kid, could be the future star?
If I remember correctly, I had Bianca somewhere when she was around 8, I think.
Okay.
When she was around like 8 year old, she was still playing orange ball, which is the lower compression ball, right? So um, we call it well, back then we call it the progressive tennis.
Right.
Now we call it the kids tennis, right? So she was still playing orange ball. She was in my program, and I also do private lessons with her.
Mhm.
And you know what? I'll be lying, if I say, and I did many interview, right, with a lot of people, and then they always ask me, when do I spot her talent and this and that? Well, come on, she was only 8 year old, right? Like, how much of talent can you spot? I think I can spot some quality, right? I can see some quality, which is very good to see. But for me to say that, well, yeah, I know one day she's going to win a US Open and become a pro. I mean, come on, how is anybody going to
You
know,
didn't have a
right?
crystal ball? You didn't have a
Exactly. So
crystal
I
ball.
wish I do, then I would have
But,
kept working with her.
but every one of
So
the players, right? Crystal
that's
ball coming
right.
out.
That's right. So anyway, the qualities that I saw was, mind you, she's just a little girl, so for her to be very determined, she's very, very competitive for being a girl. Like a lot of girls that I have, they learn to be competitive, they
Yeah.
learn to be social first, right? And then being environment, and then they learn to be competitive. But for Bianca, she was pretty competitive at an early age. She's a bit of tomboy, I guess. She's not afraid of playing boys, and whoever you throw in front of her. So mentally, she's shown a lot of, she loves to compete, and then she's not afraid to step up, right? And then another quality was that she was very, very physical, at a
Athletic.
young age. Yeah, she's very
Athletic.
athletic. She moves well on the court. She's willing to kind of throw her body around and then chasing the ball down. And she's not there's no excuse. Like, you know, she's like a little hound dog, right? Like she sees the ball and she chases it down,
Yeah.
and so she doesn't give up very, very easily. And then I think she also, at a young age, she understands that she puts a lot of I wouldn't say pressure, responsibility on her own, to herself, and then she knows that she wants to do it and she wants to be good at it, and then she give herself a lot of pressure or responsibility, and then really took it that this is something that she wants to do. It's not something sort of external to kind of influence her to, oh, you need to be doing this. I can see that it is kind of something that she wants to do, you know. So from those things, I mean, those are pretty good quality to be starting with, right? It's not something you can teach. So I would say those are something that I saw when she was young, you know. And then I talked to her, and I said this before. I always call her, you know, like the little girl with the big dream, right? And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
obviously everybody dreams of it. You know, I want to be a pro. I want to be this and that. You know, so she had her talk to and everything. It happened to come true. So, you
Well,
know.
with a dream, you start with a dream.
Yeah, you start with the dream and you work towards it, and then you know what, whether that dream is, I mean, you know, just kind of you know, just a talk or whatever it is, but you know, she was there. You can tell like that's something that she wants. And then with the parents, with her parents helping her out, her parents was very, very
Supportive.
supportive, also tough, but not tough like unreasonable, you know. Like
Right.
her parents are just like there for her, and then obviously motivating her, giving her tough time too, you know. Sometimes you need a bit of push,
Yeah.
but I think her parents were there with her all the way through. So you know, and I'm sure her parents had a lot of learning to do as well.
Yeah, because she's the only child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to see her going through this all this roller coaster ride all the way up to, playing in the US Open and becoming a pro right now, it's a long journey, and I'm sure they have their share of learning to do as well. Yeah.
I want to, you brought up three really good points for me, in terms of, because you throughout your coaching career, you've seen and worked with a lot of juniors, from 8, and up. And what interests me is I'm a believer that, when you to about 14, not that it's going to be completely, single you out to make it to the tour, but there are certain things that that has to be there, to make it worthwhile to reach your dreams. One of the three things that you mentioned with Bianca, and I have seen that in a lot of the pro players, in myself as well, with reflection, long time ago, mind you.
Not that long.
One of them is, being accountable from a young age, right? You mentioned that's very interesting, because I've seen, and I'm sure you as well, you see a lot of kids come through the starting point, parents encouraging them, or they're registered in a program because of a friend. That's
Right.
usually how it happens, right? And then at some point they take up on their own, and it shapes, depending, maybe younger, 8, 9, or 10, the passion. How can you tell, Bianca was passionate and she took it upon herself. This is what I want to do. I've also seen some kids, they've enrolled in there, and then at some point you can see that's not what they want to do, but the parents are sort of pushing them that way. So tell me a little bit, how do you distinguish that?
You know what? I think, simply put, just look at their behavior when they're training. You can tell. Look, it doesn't have to be tennis, right? You can be just normal daily work. If you go into your office and you're not very motivated, and then this is not something that you love, you can tell right away.
On tough days. That's how I would always say, right?
Of course,
They
of course.
all start out with like, oh yeah, we wouldn't want to do this, and then the tough days comes if there's a little toughness from the coach,
Right.
or if the kid is a little bored because they're doing that one thing one too many times, and
Right.
because they're bored and then they go home. But that to me differentiates the kid that really
Yeah,
wants to do
of
it.
course. You know what? Like tough day, that may be even an easier excuse, right? Because think about this. I mean, tough day. Who wants to have tough day? But it's gonna be, it's gonna happen, right? It's gonna
Right.
happen, and then obviously the coach is there to encourage them, to motivate them, and then hopefully that they bring it. Maybe they feel better that way, and then they're up for the challenge, right?
Yeah.
But the really thing that you can tell as well, when you are just not even having a tough day, like you're just there, but then even that you're physically there, but then you're not mentally there, then that's the worst, right? That's like
Yeah.
you can just tell. I mean, you're just walking on the court, but you're
Going
not
through the
really,
motion.
exactly, you're going through the motions, you're not sweating very much, you're not hustling, you're not doing, like, you can tell a lot from how their behavior on the court. And then you also watch your body language, and then watch are they engaged. You know what, like when I was a young coach, I don't realize that, but you can tell a lot by looking at their eyes.
I was
By
just
looking at their
about to say
eyes.
that.
Yeah, you look at their eyes, you look at the way they track the ball, you look at the way that they, like the way, how physical they are when they are hitting the ball, when they are moving on the court, and then do they have questions? And even, like good players, they'll look at you when you talk to you, when you talk to them, they engage with you emotionally, and then their eyes will be on you. They listen to what you have to say. And there are a lot of things you can tell whether someone is passionate, or at least feel responsible with what they're doing, accountable with the moment that they're there, right? So
Right. That's for sure. Because I have, like you said, in the eyes, that when you say something, and then the one that just really want to learn, I mean, they just want to soak. You can literally see they're soaking you in them, and then you give them an inch and take it a mile. That's what I always say, right? And
yeah.
that's so true. Now, how important, well, I know the athleticism, right? Because I hear a lot of, because tennis is so individualized, and I hear a lot of the parents' remarks, or like, oh yeah, my kids started playing tennis and they're 4. I mean, we all know, let's face it, I mean, 4 years old. Yeah, I don't know about if you call that tennis. My worry, concern is that they specialize kids so much earlier than they used to, and they forego the other sports that get them to be, athletic, the coordination, right? The hand-eye and the feet coordination. Do you know Bianca at younger age, before she really took up tennis? Did she play other sports?
You know what? I don't actually remember that I asked that, but I know that she was quite active besides playing tennis. I know, I think if I remember correctly, I think she might have tried some skating. She might have tried other things. I don't know how far she has gone with it, because my time with Bianca was so short. It was, just about a year, maybe a little bit longer. She was there for one season, like a year. So I don't really know if she invests a lot of time into other sports. I remember that she's also doing something else, because for the Orange Bowl program that I used to run, it's only 3 days a week. So I'm going to assume that she has a lot of other time to do other things. And being such a active kid, she is. I could imagine she's out there doing other things.
Yeah.
And and this is not just Bianca. I always encourage, when I have meeting with parents, and even on the court talking with the younger kids, I always encourage them to do as much as they can, and then do as much as do all sorts of different sports, because at a younger age, it's not so much about being a tennis player. I mean, they're there to learn how to play tennis, but I think for a younger age is more about preparing their body to play great tennis, right? So it's developing good athletic abilities, right? Good physical literacies.
Yeah.
Like they need to prepare themselves for what's to come, and then the more athletic they are, the more coordinated they are, the stronger they are, the more they can perform.
Right.
And then that has a lot to do with their technical skill learning too. If you're physically not quite there, you're not coordinated, you're not strong, you can move very well, then it's very difficult for you to execute some of the technical aspect of tennis. So it's more and more that we see, and if you talk to a lot of high level coaches and anyone have gone through that, I think it's universally agreed that to be great in tennis, you need to be a great athlete.
Yeah.
And then you need to, at an early age, before you start thinking about specializing in tennis, putting all your time and effort in tennis, it's very, very important that you do multiple sports. You do as much as you can, because a lot of other sports will help develop those physical skills in ways that you don't even really know about.
Yeah. That's a good point, because everybody understands, and too much emphasis, I feel, on the technical side.
Sure.
Yeah. And so, I mean, just because you have pretty strokes, solid strokes, that doesn't mean you're going to be, winning or doing, well, and playing to the level, because that comes later. I mean, that's not to say that you don't need good foundation. You do, but too much emphasis on technique, that's not everything. And athleticism, that's for sure, because, especially in this day of the tennis, I mean, it's absolutely amazing how fast, and I mean, they literally can do a split on the court and still control their upper body, and that doesn't develop for sure overnight. The third part, and I'd be very interested to get your take on this, is mentally, because you see, on the court, especially for young kids when they're starting to compete, they don't understand, it's okay to miss, and you see emotional breakdown, just not understanding, and outbursts. How important and how young would you go back in your juniors? You would encourage them to, like, hey, maybe also like work on that mental side also.
You know what? For me, if I talk about myself, how I used to train, I think there's two stages. When I first started tennis, my uncle was my coach.
Okay.
And my uncle he was very, very tough, and is, very kind of, this is what you have to do, and this and that.
You were so wild. Peter was so wild.
No, it wasn't that.
kidding.
I think, I think it's just like, he was very clear about what I needed to do. But at the same time, I think my uncle had a very kind of mellow personality, kind of way of talking. Like he's calm. He's calm. And then I remember my uncle always talked to me about, I need to work on my mental things. I need to, like, kind of mental constructions.
How old were you?
I was around 8, 9 year old when I started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was around 8.
Okay.
So I trained with my uncle for about 2 years. First, he was my starting coach, right? Okay. And then so he always talked to me about this, and then he will talk to me in a very calm way, explain to me, and then stuff like that. And I think I wasn't like a hyper kid, so I was open to talk to him. I was willing to have the conversation with him. Yep. So that gave me a lot of kind of, I guess, try to build my mental thing the way I think at a young age. Like when I go to tournament, when I lost, and I would cry and stuff like that. I would get frustrated, and then he will talk to me a lot afterwards, and then he will talk to me and then kind of be very strategically talk to me about how I should think, and then how does that motivate me, and what do I have to do to improve, and then and kind of already putting things in perspective to tell me to think critically and rationally.
Okay.
right? Try not to put myself in a very emotional state all the
And you
time.
understood that?
I yeah, I think so. I think
Wow.
so.
You were a
I think
mature
so.
8, 9-year-old.
I think so.
happened?
I don't think I tragedy, right? No. I don't think it's difficult to understand. Maybe not deeply, but I understand what it means to not get too emotional, and then plus I was young, so obviously he probably won't talk to me
And
in a very
level.
adult way,
Yeah.
but he will
Yeah.
talk to me, like the way I'm talking to kids now, like think about going out and have fun, have smile, and then
Yeah.
enjoy what you're doing, enjoy the game, right? And like when we play points in training, it's like it's just a formality, it's a way to keep track. It's
Right.
not so this and that, right? Don't
Right.
put so much emphasis on, oh, I have to win, who did I beat today, I'm on the top for, it's great to be that, to have that, but at the end I still want to kind of move them into just focus on what you accomplish, focus on the journey, right? Focus what you develop, right? Anyway, so I had that with my uncle, and then my second stage is once I left the town, the city that I was in, and then I actually moved into a school. It's an academy, right? The school is very, very specialized in sports, and tennis happens to be the strongest sport that school has. So I went there and I trained under the coach, and that was different because that was almost just kind of military type of training,
Oh.
right? It's just like very strong, very
Yeah.
tough, and very just a lot of hours. And it's, I would say, if you have an Asian background, or it doesn't have to be Asian, right? I'm sure a lot of East European trains that way too. Just like it's a very tough environment, and hoping that environment will build you, right? Make you stronger, make you tougher, and all that, right? So I've been through that too, and that shaped me differently, right? So I would say, in terms of dealing with pressure, stress, and then all that thing, that's what I kind of experienced.
Right.
And nowadays with the players, it's different. I always think that nowadays, because I think the kids nowadays, they start off like you said, it's activity, it's something maybe their friends are doing, and then they jump into it, and then they try to have fun with it, and then whether they become they go into high performance or not, that's a little bit later. But it's different in the sense that because kids nowadays, they have a lot of options, right? They have many things that they can do.
Distractions.
So that's right. Yeah. So distractions or whatever, right? It's a good thing to be doing a lot, right? Because, oh, that's my cat.
Hello. That's one of your 6 cats.
That's right. This is Kiwi. Okay, Kiwi, you gotta come down. Yeah, Kiwi.
How old is Kiwi?
Kiwi is 3 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so my because they have a lot of options, so it's sometimes difficult for them to kind of stay on track, right? And then for them to kind of just focus. And I think that's it's a good thing that they're doing a lot, but it's not a good thing, because if you really want them to develop, then it's difficult to kind of get through to them, right? Their head, and then
you have to go through a lot more layers.
Yeah, you go through more layers, and but still, it's very important once they start to compete, once they start to get into the high performance, you start to spend a lot of time talk to them about their mental games. And I'm not talking about strategies, how do you beat this person. It's just to take care of themselves mentally, to prepare them to say, hey, you have a tournament coming up, and this is what we need to kind of focus on, and make sure that they're healthy, they eat well, they sleep well, and then they don't get injured, and or if they get injured, how do they recover? There are a lot of mental things that you need to address with players. And you're hoping that they're doing it, because look, I don't live with my player,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
only
yeah,
a
yeah.
certain amount of hours in a week that you can work with your players. So that's why we're going back to talk about, if they're not responsible and they don't take responsibility, they're not accountable for what they're doing, it becomes even more difficult to build that mental side of games.
Yeah, and whether we actually, I should say you coaches, because I don't coach on the court anymore, right? Because my business is restoring confidence in players, and then what they want to do with the performance, where they want to go with it, is really on them.
Mhm.
But so you coaches, and ultimately, like you just said, you only could work with a few hours with the player. The rest of the time, the parent, one of the parents,
Mhm.
is way more involved, and and at the end of the day, the parents are the one that is the driving force, the influencer. I always feel that. And that is the other part of my job, is to guide and steer the parents, just because I've been through that pathway with my own two kids. Not only was I a player and then a coach, and coached my own two kids. So the path is different. Now I understand the path, guiding them, and most parents don't. And you sometimes, I feel, have a tough job, because you'll be, hey kids, go out and have fun and learn and all that. And then but then the parents get lost in that winning at the end of the journey. Now don't get me wrong, I am totally for winning, because who is going to go to tournaments and think, I just want to lose? Of course everybody wants to
Of
win,
course.
but how you go about it, sometimes I feel like your message get lost, because the parents, you guys are not on the same on the same journey, right?
Yeah.
And what is the one or two things that you really wish and want the parents, to get out of what Peter is coaching, teaching their players?
Um, for the parents, I think again, because I'm working with a lot of different ages, right?
Mhm.
So the age in between could spread quite apart. So what my expectation for the player and the parents' expectation for the player, for the older one, is obviously very, very different from the younger ones, right? For the younger ones, I think it's, like I said before, it's going to be a journey and learning curve for the parents as well.
Yeah.
So for them to understand that, to understand the reason why the kids is there, first at the first place, is very, very important for the parents. They need to be clear, because we've seen so many, right? We've seen so many, the kids are there, or could be friends and social, like we said before, and it could be just because parent likes tennis, but the kids has no choice.
Right.
The parents have their dreams, and then the kids have no choice, that they need to be there. So I think for the parents, parents needs to be very, very clear about the intention of why they're playing tennis, right? And then for the young one, it's easy. It's really, really no more than just having a great activity, making friends, and then having learning good values, right? And then for me, I always take a lot of pride in working with young kids, is that, hey, I really hope that some of the values that I have, the experience that I have when I used to train, I hope to pass some of the values to the kids that I'm playing with, and I hope that they become great human beings. It's not just playing tennis, right? So
So your
uh,
values when they're younger is that you want them to have fun.
yeah, I want them
And the
to have
person
fun, and I want them to understand that if you put in the effort into something, and then if you really, really kind of immerse yourself into a sport or a skill or something, hey, over the time you will benefit from it, right? You will gain something out of it, and this is yours. This is, no one can take it away from you, okay? And it has nothing to do with what sort of level you're playing, right? Because we know that in sports, in tennis especially, you can enjoy all ages, right?
Right.
So, but I think the besides the actual skill of hitting balls back and forth, the values and the sportsmanship, and then the skills that you learn on a tennis court, especially if you're competitive, once you go out to the real world, a lot of these skills will translate, and a lot of these values will translate into your daily living, right? So
Yeah,
I
your
think
work
that's very, very
ethics.
important.
For sure,
Yeah,
your work ethics and having fun.
of
Those
course.
two has to be so high and across all the levels.
For sure, for sure. You have to enjoy what you're doing,
Yeah.
right? That's for sure. So for the parents, I think it's to understand the beginning point, right? It's I think you use this word too. I use it too. It's like you're there for them to discover, right?
Correct.
For the kids to discover, and it's also for the parents to discover what they like, and then for the kids is like to discover if I like it, you know.
Oh, that's
So,
such a good point though, Peter, because I was listening to the late Kobe Bryant, and
mhm,
one of the interviews that he had, that was, he said, as parents, you know, our responsibility is to put your child in different, because he had 2 daughters, you know.
mhm,
Um, as a responsibility for parents is put your child in different sports,
mhm.
you know, and not just sports, in anything really, and
Anything.
it could be the creative stuff of art,
It
or
could
you
be
know,
painting, you know,
yeah,
in
it could
art
be
class.
anything. Exactly. And our job is to really pay attention in what is it that they really like, because how you know what child really likes something and they excel in it, because you know
Right.
it's different than hobby, right? I mean, obviously if they their hobby is watching movies, well, okay, that you're not excelling in anything, but it's just something be productive, and that is to pay attention to that and encourage them to do more of that. And too
Mhm.
often parents, like you said earlier, if I like tennis, but then my kids end up not liking tennis, I should not be pushing, because it gets harder as it get better.
Right. So that's for the younger ones, right?
Right.
As they get older, you know, like someone that's more veteran, like you know, competes a lot, and then have already becoming a player, right? We
Yeah.
call it, right? I always said there's a fine line between someone that plays tennis
Yeah.
versus you are a tennis player, right? A
Right.
player is different than someone just plays. I happen to play. So when you have embarked on the path of being, you know, competing, trying to earn a scholarship or even a
Mhm.
chance to turn pro, the expectation of the parents is also needs to be different, you know,
That's a really
because
good point.
right, because now I'm pretty sure the player themselves will have expectation of themselves already, right?
Yeah.
And usually they can become very, very critical. So I would say the parents needs to take even more of a, you know, stronger supporting role, whether it's financially, emotionally, and all that. And then, you know, between the coaches and the parents, there could be a lot of conversation about expecting how well they're doing, a little bit more results oriented,
Yeah.
right? But that's not something the players ever needs to kind of, you
No.
know, that again, that's only between the coach and the player. So what I'm trying to say is that the coach and parents have a conversation, but the coach and the player also have conversation, and the parents and the player having their conversation, they're very different, you know, they're different types of conversation. And but from my perspective is that um, for the players is still about being motivated, right? Find a way to keep them motivated, to get inspired, to make sure they're healthy. And it's really not a whole lot of difference compared to when they're younger. It's about the same thing. It's just now that they're more mature, they're stronger, they're more ready to kind of tackle bigger challenge. But for the parents, it's different too. For the parents, because when the kids are young, they don't really know a lot. They're also on the
Mhm.
same journey. But now that they're older, they've been there. You know, a lot of parents will get very, very invested very, very quickly. You know, they hear a lot of things from other people. So and then they compare a lot, because why? Because they're still paying. You know,
Yeah.
and when you are putting in the money, then well, you want to get the best value out of it, right? So they can't help doing that. So the conversation between the parents and the coach is be transparent, you know, be transparent, make sure that your expectation is correct, is setting at the right, you know, the right level. And then to be honest about what's happening, and then to keep informed what's going to happen. And then, you know, you let them know how the player is doing, and you make sure that, you know, everything is covered well, and you make sure that you let the parents know that, hey, you need to be supportive, and you need to let them do their thing, because the older player, they don't want so much of the parents to be involved, to be there.
Right.
You know, they listen to the coaches more than they listen to the parents. And then they don't want the older kids, they don't want the parents to wear a coach's hat. They want the parents to be their parents. They want
Right.
parents to be there for them, to be with them, to support them, right? So the conversation there is also very, very different. So but you can see that what I want the parents to know is they play a much, much stronger role in terms of mental development than the coach does, actually, in certain ways, right? Because they spend a lot of time with them. And then when it comes to supportive, emotional support, the blood is thicker than water, right? Your parents, your brother, sister, parents, grandparents, when they support you, is different than I'm just a coach supporting you, right? Like it's, you know, they can believe in me all they want, and then, you know, I know that coaches sometimes can develop a very, very strong bond with the player. That's very, very possible too, you know. But the support coming from your family is also very different, right? It's probably even stronger. So the family, the parents should support them, and then encourage them and motivate them that way, and still leaving the coaching part to the coaches.
You know what, that is so important, because you talked about the transitional, right, for the players from you know, 8 to 12, and then 12 to that 16, and then so they're different stages. And parents, you're right, parents need to, because dealing with, all of a sudden, you know, blink of an eye, your 8-year-old is now 15 or 16. They don't want to be spoken to the same way, as they don't want to be, you know, huddled over. They want freedom, right? They want to detach from the parents. You know, a lot of times that's what I do with our 2 kids who are now in college at Ohio State University on the men and women's team. You know, as much as I know and Eve knows about the game, I can only speak for myself, you know, depending on, because now they have their own coach at school. So I actually switched my role from a coach's role to a parent role. So a lot of the times, it's not that I don't know. I mean, I watch the matches all the time, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, you know. Depending on what they need, and I switch a lot now to the parent role, to the supportive, you know, the supporting parent role for the coach, as well as a mom. They come on, let's say last weekend, my son blew a huge match against a rivalry, and I can only imagine how bad, you know, when you lose, when you know you lost it for the team, you feel so bad. There's no point in me speaking to him about this and that, about from my coaches. Hey, you know, that was tough match. You know, go on the lighter tone from a parent support, understanding. This is what I found out with my, you know, what I do with the players, with the mental and emotional stage, is that when you come from an understanding of supporting a parent supportive role, hey, I know you mess up. It's okay. I'm here for you. And understanding from that perspective, you would be amazed how much more open they are, how much more willing they are to speak with you when you don't force them. Let's talk about your match. Let's talk about this and that, right? So critical for the parents to transition themselves. Also, the lingo, the language they use from a kid's point to a teenager standpoint.
Yeah, and I think it's also like we're generalizing, right? And I would say probably. And anyways, I think it's not to say that exceptions are not going to happen, right? There will be kids just maybe love the parents being like stronger with them, you know, or
I don't know about
maybe
that. I don't know any kid that
maybe
was.
maybe, and then
But tough love is different.
there may be kids players that loves to talk tennis with their parents because maybe, you know, I don't know. There could be a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying in general, like what we have seen is that parents are better off doing the supporting role, and then do that very, very well, because parents are like the pillow, the shoulder for
Yeah.
them to lean on.
Yeah.
They lean on a coach in a different way, but they're not gonna lean on my shoulder and cry about it all the time. But when they get sad, when they get disappointed, they want that shoulder to lean on, and that shoulder is usually their parents.
Right.
And then the parents don't need to talk about the matches. They don't need to be talking about why you lost, why you this and that or whatever. You just have to be there with them.
Right.
Be there, watch the matches, and then be there to support. And I think that's usually what the parents' role is. And the higher the level, the stronger the parents has to be. It's not just to provide a shoulder to lean on. I'm saying, like, the parents, they have to have a very strong heart too.
Yes.
Because at the end, let's just say if it is really a disappointment, then they have to have a strong enough heart to somehow communicate or make their child feel, hey, no matter what happened, it is still positive.
Yes.
Right at the end, it is like, it's not bad. It's just, it's competition, and winning and losing, it's just part of it, right? So they still have to come through as this is positive, right? And even though things can get pretty disappointing sometimes or upsetting sometimes, right?
Well, that's the thing, like winning and losing comes and goes, right? Because there's a lot of factors that go in it. The one thing I really feel that cannot be compromised, and that goes from when I was working with our kids and the players, is that the work ethic that you put in earlier that you mentioned. And on top of that, the one thing that cannot be compromised is the fight when they go on the court. No matter how difficult things are, whether you're playing terrible or affected by the situation, environment, line calls or whatnot, how you develop that confidence, and I always say to players, is when you work hard in your training, okay, that is going to carry you, because it's called deserving. When you work hard, it's no different than like school in a way, right? When there's exams coming up, right, and you putting the time and the hours to work on math, for example, and then you go into your exam, you're like, okay, the hours that you have put in, and then you should feel good. That's all you can do, is trust on the work that you put in. Obviously, in tennis is different because it's creativity and problem solving, and you never know what's going to happen. That is one thing I feel like kids shy a little bit away from, not understanding, because they base their winning and losing on like my forehand backhand, right, and not sitting back and just like, okay, I put in this work, let's go and see. And then of course they are wary of what the parents are going to say after, because parents, which bring me to the next point, me being a parent as well, okay, I see a lot is that parents think their kids are better than what the kids are really at, the level. Right. So if your kids level at a scale from 1 to 10 is super high. If your kid's level is about a 4, of course, now we have UTR to sort of tell them, and to force the issue that they are maybe an 8 really is doing an injustice in, not servicing what is at hand, because that's where the pressure, the pressure comes in, because they know the level is maybe a 3, but I'm forced to like train and play with somebody at a level 8. So I want you to talk about that pressure.
Yeah, you know what? Well, look, that's just pressure that parents are putting on me as a coach. It's you're right there, and I don't think to a certain degree it's not completely the parents' fault, right? We always look at our kids. I don't have any kids, but I could imagine. I will understand.
Your pets are your kids.
not trying to catch my kids, right? So I expect them to do something. So yeah, but I'm saying you always look at your child, and then you want to think that they, they're great, and then they're talented, they have, they have the skills and stuff like that. I don't think is the wrong way to think. But I think what is wrong is to assume very quickly, or to set false expectations, right?
Right.
You probably see a little bit less with parents that play maybe at a high level, and that really understand the game, and that really knows what it's about, right? And it's not just tennis, it could be anything, right?
Right.
So that may be a bit easier, right? But if you have parents that don't know really anything about the sports, who really doesn't play, or play at just a club level, then they could have a different assumption, right? Or expectation of what their kids can do, right?
Yeah.
And so the pressure becomes when they talk to me, or we go through this every year, right? Every year when the kids are moving from program to program, and they always think that they can jump, right? They can always move ahead and stuff like that. So that's just pressure for me to take it in, and then to listen, and then to kind of communicate that, hey, you know what? And we already know that there's a pretty big discrepancy between the player, actually their skill, where they at, and then and also compared to where they think they're at, right? So it's about me communicating through like what's really happening. Again, be very transparent, because unless I'm a private coach and I only just take one player and I'm training the player, then whatever environment will work. But then if it's a group environment, then it's very important that you make sure that it works for them, but they also work for the program. Like it has to be a reciprocal relationship. Like you want to get something out of it because you love the challenge, but then the players in the program also has to be challenged by you.
Correct.
You have to bring something to the table, right? So that's just the reality. And then for a program leader, I have to make sure that dynamic is always somewhat balanced, right? And then and there are always some exceptions to be made, but that exception is always based on assessment, looking at the player. Yeah, you know what, the skill is there. Maybe a little bit awkward backhand, maybe a little bit need a better serve, but the overall, like we're talking about the mentality, the ethics, the skill level, all has to be somewhat in the ballpark for it to happen, right? And so the pressure is really just dealing with parents, making sure that they understand what is really the level, you know.
Patience is a virtue.
Yeah, it's really just
time
that.
to develop, right?
Yeah.
It's not like just a little journey. Takeaway. All right, I want you to, what would you like the 11, 12-year-old range take away from you? And then for the 15 and 16, because you are in the program from the under 12 to all the way to the older kids.
I always tell the younger ones, how I love tennis, and I just want them to love it, to enjoy it. It's a great sport. It's a great sport. It's a difficult sport. They will be challenged, and then and even in the same environment training, because again, tennis is individual, right? You train in the same environment, but when you play, you're competing, right? So I want them to know that this is really a journey, right? You're going to learn to lose, but you're also going to learn to win. Winning isn't always just about being happy and excited and then, oh my god, like I'm the best, right? Like there's ways to win, there's ways to lose, right? Whether you win, lose, there you have to learn to be graceful, right? And then and also to learn how to, you know, have strong values, right? To have very strong work ethics, because I believe all these things are carried into your daily living, your life. It's not, again, it's not just about being on the tennis court, right?
Yeah.
If you you know, if you act differently on the tennis court than it is on your daily living, well then why? Like I actually, you know, I want to bring up a point. Like I think a lot of it, and this one probably kind of goes into the older ones too. I think the more they get into high level and as they get older, they need to learn how to face themselves. You know, they need to realize who they are,
Yeah.
and then they need to be able to face the truth. You know, which is the really reason why they're working so hard towards something, right? And then make sure that they're not delusional, right? About or having too many things distracting them, right? If they realize that, hey, I want that scholarship, well then you just need to focus on what's going to give you the best chance or best opportunity to get you there, you know. And then I think most of the time when they put in the effort, it's very, very achievable, it's very obtainable. But if they get distracted a lot and they don't put in the time, they don't put in the effort, and it's difficult to make it happen, right? To make it work.
So I'm hearing work ethics, be true to yourself.
Yeah.
All right. And have clarity, right?
Yeah.
Of that on what you need to do in order to achieve your dream.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I think those are very important, you know, as they get older, right?
Yeah.
As they get older, and then when they compete at a higher level. Young ones, you know, have fun, right? Have fun, learn the game, discover what you really like, discover if this is what you really want to spend 15, 20 hours a week on, you know. And then I would say, yeah, nowadays we see by the time they're like, you know, earlier it could be 12, right? A little bit later it could be 13, 14. They should start thinking about that. Okay, this is something I gotta pursue, right? And then this has become part of their life, right? So you know, that transition will happen, and when it happens, then it's all about, you know, work ethics, right? It's all about setting the right goal, have the clarity of their mindset, and have the determination, right, to make sure that, hey, it's day in, day out, this is, you know, this is what I have to be there. I have to mentally be engaged when I'm working, when I'm training.
Show up.
And then I think yeah, like I said, you know, if they are truthful to themselves, they're accountable, then usually good things will happen, right? It's not like, you know, it's just like you say, if I'm not prepared for an exam, and when I do know that exam this coming up weekend, and then I'm start to think about this and that, I haven't even studied, but then I expect myself to ace the exam. Well, you're not being very truthful, you know, you're just lying to yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, Peter, that was so good. Thank you very much for spending the time with me. And
no problem.
You know, there was a lot of good tips in there. And so what's the verdict of your next, what's happening with your lockdown?
We are hoping to just get back as soon as possible. You know, today's Friday, so maybe there'll be some announcement being made about what zone we're getting into. If we get back to the red zone, then I think we can certainly run the program. Another thing is maybe we need to prepare to take down the bubble, right? If we take down the bubble, then we'll be outdoor, so that may help the situation. So right now it's just playing waiting game. You know,
it's a waiting game. So I am glad while you were in that waiting game, you've got your 6 cats that you're going to be training.
That's right.
You know, jumping hoops and all. So I want to see videos of that.
Okay, well, they are not that easy to train, so I will try my best.
All right, thank you so much. I wish you best of luck with the coaching juniors. I'm sure we'll be going to round 2 with you to follow you up.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.